Hello there, welcome to the Football Block. My name's Brandon. Today we have another episode of the Weekend Roundup, another episode of News Bits. And as usual, we're going to look at Europe's top 5 leagues, talk about what has happened, all the big news, and things like that. This episode, though, is going to be a little different because we have one particular game to start off with, and that is the League Cup. We had the League Cup here in England between Chelsea and Liverpool, the final here, and Liverpool come out on top after a 1-0 win all the way in extra time. That's where we saw the solitary goal. And in my opinion, I thought that this was actually a very interesting game. It was a very fun game to watch. Both teams had a whole lot of chances. I think Liverpool was overall the better team, but Chelsea still had a whole lot of chances to win. A lot of people have been talking about the fact that this Liverpool team is full of young players. I mean, you just look at the lineup. There's a bunch of guys that are missing through injury. For example, Kelleher in goal besides Alisson, no Salah. Gakpo was starting. Harvey Elliott was starting. You also had Endo starting in the midfield. Bradley at right back. A bunch of young players there, and yet they still were able to be very composed, very strong. They still had that team mentality that any Jurgen Klopp team has. All credit to Jurgen Klopp, who is, of course, leaving at the end of the season. I think that as the game started and as it went on, Chelsea had some really close chances, but like I said before, Liverpool was the better team. That being said, Chelsea did have one chance to win it all at the very, very end of regulation near stoppage time. Gallagher had a wide open shot. As I talked about how this Liverpool team is so young, they are susceptible to making some silly mistakes at the back. There was a move there as a counterattack where Gallagher was wide open, and then Kelleher had to step up and make a very, very good save. Now, in extra time, the winning goal would actually fall to Virgil van Dijk, which I think was very, very fitting because he had scored a goal in the second half of regulation time, and it was ruled out for being offside. It was a very kind of complicated call, and I think that it was actually very, very unfair that this goal was chalked up. So, in a very cyclical nature of football, Van Dijk was the one that eventually came away with the header in the 118th minute. A great header from him. Wonderful scenes there to see Jurgen Klopp come away with at least one trophy at the end of the season, and such a trophy that was won in a great manner with all the young players on the field. But let's move on to the Premier League. Let's stay in England, and on Saturday, we had one game that we're going to talk about here in particular, and that is Manchester United going up against Fulham. This was a really interesting game because Manchester United is going into this game. You know how the season is for Manchester United. You never really know exactly what's going to happen. I thought that the United had turned a new leaf and was at least getting results out of games, but in this match here, I thought they were just outclassed in certain parts of the field. I think that Fulham was a better team for majority of the match, and it's interesting because Fulham scored first, and United was, just fighting desperately for an equalizer, which they ironically would get after a goalkeeper mistake, and Harry Maguire was able to poke in the rebound. Harry Maguire, of all players, who I think is a little overhated. I think he's a good player. He's had some pretty silly moments, but actually I don't think that he is the issue with Man United this season. Yes, past seasons he hasn't been that good, and there's a lot to criticize about this Manchester United team, but I don't think Harry Maguire is one of them. But regardless, at the end of the match, only a few seconds left, Adama Traore, who is at Fulham now, had a gut-busting run where he was able to dribble past basically the entire Man United team, and then he laid it off to Iwobi, who, with a very nice strike, he wrong-footed Onana and poked in the winner to win 2-1. Very, very crazy end to the game right there. Manchester United lose again. Moving on elsewhere on England on Sunday, we had Bournemouth going up against Manchester City, and this was an interesting game because I thought that it mirrored the other side of Manchester's match against Fulham in the sense that Bournemouth was the better team than than Manchester City. They outplayed them. It was a very tough game. This is the type of game that you would expect to be tough anyway, going away to Bournemouth. Phil Foden would score the solitary goal for Man City. It was a shot from Haaland, which was saved by the keeper, and Foden was able to poke in the rebound. But City did not have that many chances, and Bournemouth was actually fairly wasteful with the chances that they had. James Tavernier had a really wide open chance that he should have scored and should have equalized there. But City come away with a very, very valuable 3 points. The last game we're going to talk about on Saturday was Arsenal going up against Newcastle, and this was a game that many people were excited about, and they were very intrigued to see what type of Arsenal would show up. Because in the Premier League, Arsenal, at least on form, is the best team in the league. The way that they've just been smashing teams as of late. But at the midweek in the Champions League, they had a very meek performance against Porto. They were losing 1-0 there. So people were intrigued to see what Arsenal would show up. And I think it's safe to say that Arsenal is back to their goal-scoring form, as they dropped 4 goals here on Newcastle, and it could have been more than 4. It could have been 5 or 6. Arsenal completely tore Newcastle to shreds. Kind of sad to see, but it is a bit inevitable. Newcastle is dealing with a lot of stuff right now. Of course, there's all the injuries that they've had throughout the entirety of their season, but they're back in European competitions for a while. They have a lot more expectations on their shoulders. It looks to be kind of bursting at the seams a little bit for Newcastle there, and Arsenal just put them out of their misery. They scored some really nice goals as well. In particular, my favorite of the 4 was Saka's goal from that really tight angle there. I thought that was a very, very nice finish. But now let's take a trip to Spain in Liga. We're going to start off on Friday. We had a pretty big matchup between Real Sociedad and Villarreal. A game that was very important for both of these teams. Obviously, Villarreal have not been having the best season. They've had a few chop and change in terms of their managers, and they look to be turning a new leaf. They look to be heading in the right direction. But on the other hand, you have Real Sociedad, who had an amazing season last year. And overall, they've been having an okay season up until this point, but it looks like they're getting a little fatigue. It looks like, there's some maybe bad morale that's seeping into the squad. It's getting to the business end of the season. They lost their match in the Champions League to PSG despite playing very well, and it looks like they're having a hard time picking themselves up after that, because in this game here, I thought Villarreal deservedly came away with a win, a 3-1 win. Now, Sociedad started off the game the better team. It was actually very similar to the match against PSG in the Champions League, where Sociedad started off better. They were creating more chances. They were holding on to the ball, but Villarreal was able to basically just capitalize on the few chances that they did have, open up some flaws in Real Sociedad's defense. They scored there. And from that point on, it looked like Real Sociedad kind of just fell apart, for lack of a better term, and Villarreal was able to come away with 2 more goals to win 3-1. Overall, good performance from Villarreal. Very, very necessary performance, as I was saying before. This goal from Sorloth to make it 3-1 in particular, I thought was a very, very nice finish from the striker there. Moving on to Saturday, we had Barcelona going up against Getafe. Barcelona ended up winning this match 4-0, and this is one of the best performances that we've seen from Barcelona this entire season. Of course, they've shown up in some of the big games. I thought that they played amazing against Atletico Madrid in that match there where João Felix scored, but they also played well in the games against Sevilla, the 2 games against Real Betis, and the first half against Real Madrid. But ironically, it was the games against the smaller opponents where Barcelona really faltered. And not to say that Getafe is the smallest team. They are 10th in the Liga right now, so right smack in the middle. And they have some very talented players. But this was a very good performance from Barcelona. Xavi went with a different lineup up top. He had Rafinha, Lewandowski, and João Felix, as opposed to Ferran Torres or Lamine Yamal. Christensen still started in the midfield, but you also had Kubarsi, the youth center back there. And Barcelona, from the front foot, was a better team. They were the team that was going forward. Getafe didn't really offer much throughout the entire match, and you can argue that's just because the attackers had a bad game. You can also argue that Barcelona defensively was very strong, which I think they were. Cubarsí in particular had a great game, as did Araujo. But it would be Rafinha that opened the score in the first half. He had a really good run down the right-hand side, and then he curled it past the goalkeeper. But what ended up being a really funny sequence of events was Rafinha had essentially 3 chances in that exact same position. The first one he scored. The second one he tried to score with his right foot and completely fluffed his lines. Had a wayward shot that went wide over the top of the goal. And then in the third instance there, he tried to pass it to João Felix, but he overcooked the pass. And it was interesting because heading into halftime, Barcelona had been playing great in all facets, with the exception of those 2 chances there. But you always felt that Barcelona could do more. And then also, as a Barcelona fan, we've seen this so many times this season where they started off playing pretty well, or at least okay, and then the performance starts to deteriorate, and then the other team gets back into the game. Fortunately for us Barcelona fans, that did not happen actually in the second half. Barcelona was still at full throttle. Rafinha did not let those misses get to him mentally. He actually had a very good performance. He ended up getting another assist. João Felix scored after a great assist from Christensen, of all players, who pushed up into the midfield. And then Frankie de Jong, who I think probably was the man of the match, had a very good finish to make it 3-0, and then Fermin Lopez came off the bench and then scored after Vitor Roque had his shot deflected off the goalkeeper. Overall, great performance from Barcelona, like I said before. And Barcelona briefly was second in the table. We also had Almeria going up against Atletico Madrid, and this was a surprisingly very fun game to watch. It ended up being 2-2. Almeria is the worst team in La Liga this year, statistically speaking. They are 20th, rock bottom of the table, and they have yet to record a single win. That being said, when they go up against the big teams, they give the big teams a run for their money. It's just in all the other games where they just cannot win. And then even in those games where they may play well, they don't do enough to come away with a win. And it was looking like it was going to be a routine win for Atletico Madrid when, after a great cross from Reynildo, Angel Correa scored in the second minute. But Luca Romero, who is on loan from AC Milan, scored a very nice goal. His first goal for Almeria, a curling shot from far out into the bottom corner to make it 1-1. But into the second half, Rodrigo de Paul would score his first goal of the season, an uncharacteristic goal from him where he just picked the ball up and had a really nice dribble and then poked it past the goalkeeper. But Luca Romero, again, only a few minutes after, would equalize. This goal was also very nice, outside the boot into the roof of the net. No chance for Bloc there. And then from that moment on, I think that Atletico Madrid was the better team. I think they had so many chances, they just did not finish them. Morata, who's been having a great season, just came back from injury, and unfortunately, the typical Morata moments that everyone criticizes him for kind of showed up in this match. He had a shot towards the end right there, which really should have been a goal. It really should have been the winner there. But unfortunately for Atletico Madrid, he missed that, and the match finishes 2-2, which is not good for Atletico Madrid in the table. Obviously, the title is pretty much out of reach at this point, but they're trying to finish as high up the table as they can. This was a game that they really should have won. Moving on to the next day, we had Real Betis going up against Athletic Club. This was a good game, and this was a game that I personally thought that Athletic Club would come into this and have a statement win, especially when you consider last weekend where they just came away with a wonderful win over Girona, which basically killed the title race in Spain. But surprisingly here, it was Athletic Club that would get outplayed by Real Betis. This was a great performance from Real Betis. I think that, Betis is a team that sometimes it underperforms when you look at the talented managers that they have had in the past, or this great squads that they've had, the history that the club has. Sometimes they underperform, but they always have a great performance in them, and this was one of the times where everything just clicked, and it was just great all around. Avila, the Argentinian striker who came from Osasuna, scored his first goal for Real Betis here. Really nice finish from him. And then Williams got sent off. Everything just started to fall apart from Athletic Bilbao in the first half there. They scored an own goal. They were able to grab an equalizer at the very beginning of the very end of the first half, and it looked like heading into the second half maybe they could muster together some type of a comeback. That never really materialized, and Johnny Cardozo, the American midfielder who is at Real Betis this season, scored an absolute banger to make it 3-1 to Real Betis. Closed up shop and secured the 3 points for Real Betis there. The last match that we're going to look at was Real Madrid versus Sevilla. A very interesting matchup, of course, two of the biggest teams in Spanish football. Also the return of Sergio Ramos. The first match that we saw this season ended in a 1-1 draw, and that was, in my opinion, one of the best games of the La Liga season so far, probably the best games of just the 2023-2024 season. This match did not produce the same amount of fireworks, but it was still a really good game. It was back and forth. I thought that, of course, Real Madrid is the better team. Sevilla is having a terrible season, but they can still show up when needed, and they had some pretty close chances, and Nesri had a shot that he probably should have scored in the opening 15 minutes or so. Lucas Vazquez actually opened the score, but it was judged for a foul, or it was judged to be not a legal goal because there was a foul in the build-up. Rightly so, but it would finish 1-0 after an absolute wonder strike from Luka Modrić there, rolling back the years. It is great to see Luka Modrić score here. He's a guy that's not really having the best season, but of course he is a legend of the game, Real Madrid legend, La Liga legend, and it was a typical long shot from outside the box, curling into the bottom corner from Luka Modrić there, and they were able to hold on to that lead to win 1-0. On Monday, we had Girona going up against Rayo Vallecano, and Girona needed a result here to, at least maintain some sort of a title race. And I thought that as the game started off, they looked really sluggish. They looked fatigued. It's understandable because of just the tough results they've had over the past 2 weeks. But they were able to pick themselves up in the second half. They did break the deadlock, scoring a goal there, and then as the match went on into the dying embers, Rayo Vallecano had a player sent off, and then after stoppage time, Savio scored 2 nice goals to make it 3-0 to Girona. Very important win for them. And if you look at the table, Real Madrid still is top, 65 points. But Girona is, relatively close behind them. It's Real Madrid, so you don't expect them to drop that many points. So that's pretty much it. But still, Girona is keeping it close. They are on 59 points, and then Barcelona is in 57 points, coming up close on Girona's tail, and then Atletico Madrid is 4th on 52 points. Let's move on to Serie A in Italy. We had some really good games this weekend to look at. The first game that we are going to look at is on Sunday. We had Juventus going up against Frosinone. Surprisingly, despite the fact that Juventus was top of the table at some points of the season so far, they've actually been going through a really rough patch of form. They have been winless in their past 4 games, and and it's not for a lack of trying. If you look at their performances here recently, Vlahovic has been having a really good season, very underrated striker, but it's just their defense. They cannot have a consistent defensive performance, which is uncharacteristic for an Allegri team. But, of course, these things happen. That great form from Vlahovic would carry into this game as he would score 2 goals there. It was a very back-and-forth game. Vlahovic opened the score there with a really nice goal, but like I was saying before, the problem with this Juventus team is they just sometimes lack the defensive posture and composure which would, very evidently be seen here as they conceded two back-to-back goals, two very silly goals. Their defense was just cut apart by Frosinone, but Vlahovic would equalize to make it 2-2 towards the end of the first half there. Very, very fun first half of football to watch. Now, the second half was a little more subdued, not as many chances, and it was looking like the match was going to finish 2-2 until there was a set piece with literally the last kick of the game, which Daniele Rugani, from a very tight angle, was able to poke home the winner. Rugani, of all players. Very, very cool scenes to see, the passionate celebrations from the Juventus fans and the players. Very, very vital 3 points for Juventus there against Frosinone. The next game we're going to look at is Cagliari versus Napoli. And Napoli is a team that is also going through a bit of a rough patch of form, and they were not able to turn the leaf around and get a victory here. I think Cagliari was by far the better team. They had so many chances throughout this match. They initially scored a goal that was ruled off for offside, but they kept knocking on the door. Gianluca Lapadula, the Peruvian-Italian striker, was causing so many issues up top, along with Luvumbo. But it would be Napoli that opened the score after a very clutch goal from Osimhen. And he has been, of course, the most clutch player in Serie A, in my opinion, this year. Obviously he hasn't been able to hit the high heights that he did last year. You have to look at a guy like Lautaro Martinez or even Vlahovic, like I just mentioned. But still, Osimhen shows up when his team needed him most. A very, very nice header from Osimhen there to put Napoli up. And it was looking like, against the run of play and against all the statistics and everything that we've seen, that Napoli was going to be able to hold on to this lead. But they made one mistake at the end, a very, avoidable defensive mishap there. And Luvumbo was able to score a very nice finish to steal the win from Napoli, and this match finished 1-1. Not a good result from Napoli there. On to a team at the top end of the table that is just having the time of their lives. We have Inter Milan going up against Lecce. This match finished 4-0 to Inter Milan, and at this point, this is just kind of week in, week out, typical performance from Inter Milan. They're smashing teams left and right. They just came off a very, very hard-fought win over Atletico Madrid in the Champions League as well. Lautaro Martinez, best player in Serie A and one of the best players in the entire world at this moment. He scored a brace today. Frattesi also scored, as well as De Vrij. Interesting player to see score a goal there. Overall, very, very good performance from Inter Milan, like usual. To the other side of the city, we had AC Milan going up against Atalanta. Very, very good matchup between two very talented teams in Serie A, and the match started off with a bunch of fireworks with one of the best goals that we'll see all season from Rafael Leao. A wonderful dribble, and then he curled it into the top corner. It just hit the side netting with a wonderful shot. Absolutely amazing goal there. But throughout the rest of the match, it really was kind of a seesaw. It went back and forth. And Milan, for how good they can be going forward, they do tend to, concede a lot of chances, and then, they can be forced into some silly mistakes, and they eventually gave away a penalty, which was scored by Koopmeiners. And then after that, I think that Milan had the more, better chances, you could say. They probably should have won, but, for just the lack of clinical nature that they have going forward, and then the lack of composure that they can have at the back at times, means that I do think that a 1-1 draw is fairly accurate, an accurate depiction of the game. Now, moving on to Monday, we had some really important games here. We had Roma going up against Torino, and this was actually a very close game on paper. It ended up being 3-2, but Roma was a better team, and in particular, Paulo Dybala had a wonderful performance. You can argue maybe his best performance in a Roma shirt. He scored a hat-trick here. First goal was a penalty, but the second goal was an absolute beauty. Another curler from outside the box into the top corner, and then it was a very, very classy finish for the treble there. Now, Torino did make it interesting. They equalized after Dybala's first goal with Duvan Zapata, and then they also scored a second goal late on after an own goal, and were trying to push for an equalizer to make it 3-3. But at the end of the day, they were unable to do so, and Roma come away with a very vital 3 points for them as they move up in the table. But the last game we're going to talk about in Serie A this season is very interesting. We had Fiorentina going up against Lazio. And Lazio had a very good performance against Bayern Munich in the Champions League, but they could not follow that up with a victory in the weekend after they lost to Bologna last week. They also could not follow that up with a victory either, as they fell again, and yet another 2-1 loss to Fiorentina here. And this was a game that I think Fiorentina was by far the better team. They had so many more chances. They were playing so much more aggressively. They were the team that was more proactive going forward. Luis Alberto was able to score against the run of play for Lazio, though. That is one thing that Lazio will always be great at, just the counterattacks, the quick counterattacks that they always have. That's how they were able to create so many chances against Bayern in the Champions League. Similar story here. Great finish from Alberto. Wonderful build-up play. But like I said, it was against the run of play. And then from that moment on, in the second half in particular, I thought that Fiorentina kind of just flicked a switch and took the game to a whole nother level. They would score an equalizer, and then they had a penalty that Nico Gonzalez missed. He hit the post, and I think the commentator said that was the fourth time that Fiorentina hit the post in this match, which just goes to show how many chances that they really had. They would eventually gain the lead after Bonaventura, the Serie A legend, veteran who's been in the Italian game for it seems like forever at this point. He was able to score there, and Fiorentina held on to the lead, and they win 2-1 for yet another surprising loss for Lazio. Looking at the table, of course, Inter Milan is still top, 66 points. The win's pretty much guaranteed at this point. Juventus is in second with 57 points, and then there is a bit of a drop-off there. AC Milan is third now with 53 points, and then Bologna is in fourth with 48 points. Now let's move on to Germany. In the Bundesliga, we had some pretty good matchups here. We had Bayer Leverkusen going up against Mainz. This was a game that Bayer Leverkusen opened the score, a goal from Xhaka, a pretty good goal from him. They were playing well, not the best performance overall, but still, decent performance from them almost immediately after they scored the opener there. Mainz would equalize, and they made it really tough, but Eindrich would score the winner in the midway point of the second half. Very important win for Bayer Leverkusen, and they set a new German club record by playing 33 straight competitive matches without losing. Very, very commendable performance from Xabi Alonso and all the players on this team here. And on Saturday, because of that win that Bayer Leverkusen had, Bayern Munich absolutely had to beat RB Leipzig, and this match ended up being one of my favorite matches to watch this weekend. It was truly end to end. Both teams had a whole lot of chances. Harry Kane, of course, would open the score for Bayern Munich there. But from that moment on, Leipzig really was knocking on the door. They had a bunch of really close chances. They eventually would score a bit of a funny goal to watch. Sesko scored. He wrong-footed Neuer. The ball did take a deflection, though. You could say Neuer maybe should have done better. But I just find it funny that was the goal that was the ball that ended up going in, despite the fact that Leipzig had so many other really well put together chances. But in the 92nd minute, Harry Kane, with a wonderful volley and an assist from Choupo-Moting as well, scored to snatch the victory for Bayern Munich. you could say a little bit against the run of play. You can argue that maybe Bayern Munich shouldn't have deserved this win here, but when you have a guy like Harry Kane in the team, there's always a fighting chance, and he, just like he's been having the entire season, had a really good game. Elsewhere in the Bundesliga, on Sunday, Eintracht Frankfurt and Wolfsburg played out a very exciting 2-2 draw, with 3 of the goals there happening in the first 35 minutes, and in the stoppage time of the second half, in the 93rd minute, Marmoush, the Egyptian, would equalize there for Eintracht Frankfurt. Very fun game to watch. And we had an upset where Borussia Dortmund fell 3-2 to Hoffenheim. A game that was very much back and forth. Hoffenheim scored first, then Daniel Malen, who has been having a very good past few weeks of games, equalized, and then Schlotterbeck scored for Dortmund to put them in the lead. But in the second half, they collapsed, with Bayer scoring 2 goals only 3 minutes apart to grab an equalizer and then the lead for Hoffenheim, a lead which they would hold on to for all 3 points. Now, looking at the Bundesliga table, Bayer Leverkusen is still top of the table, 61 points. Meanwhile, Bayern Munich is in second place on 53 points. And then Stuttgart is in third with 47, and then Borussia Dortmund remains in fourth with 41 points. Now let's move on to Ligue 1 in France. We have some games to talk about here. The first game I want to focus on is PSG's game. They tied 1-1 with Rennes. Bit of a lackluster performance from them. They actually needed an equalizer in the 98th minute from Gonzalo Ramos. Not the most convincing performance from PSG, but at this point of the season, it's pretty much guaranteed that they're going to win. They're putting all their eggs into the Champions League basket. So it is somewhat understandable and somewhat acceptable to see a performance like this. We also saw a good game between Lens and Monaco, 3-2 on the score sheet there. Lots of goals. Balogun scored. There was an own goal from Samba, as well as another goal from Wahi to make it 2-1. And it would be Minamino winner in the 93rd minute. Lots of late minute goals this weekend all across Europe's top 5 leagues. Very hard fought. 3 points there for Monaco. We also had Marseille going up against Montpellier. Montpellier's not been having a good season at all. They are 15th in Ligue 1. Marseille's been very up and down. They have a new manager in. The former Ivory Coast manager Cassette just came in recently. They're looking to kind of, motivate the players and kind of shoot back up the table. And while Marseille overall has not been having the best season, one player in particular in their squad, Aubameyang, has been having a wonderful season. He had a brace here. He increases his goal tally for the season, and like I said, he just continues pumping out great performances every week for this team. Looking at the table in Ligue 1, we have PSG at the first place position there. No surprise there, 54 points. Very sizable gap. Brest in second place with 43 points. Monaco in third on 41 points. So, anyway, that has been my review of Europe's top 5 leagues across this entire season, this weekend. Let me know what you thought of this weekend. There were some pretty interesting games, a lot of last-minute goals across all the leagues. Let me know what was your favorite game of the weekend. What do you think was the best goal of the weekend? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this video with a friend. Don't forget to follow the Football Bloc on social media. But anyway, guys, I will see you later. Hope you have a nice rest of your night.